righty.
Mother would start us with anything she thought we were capable of doing as soon as we got old enough to do it. And I was watching her one day make biscuits. She had a big wooden thing, and you filled that with flour. You sifted it, you know, from a little thing hanging inside the cabinet, and you filled that about 2/3 full of flour. And then you made a little dish in the middle of it, and you put your salt and Crisco or whatever you were putting, and soda and baking powder, whatever you were going to put in the biscuits. Then you stirred this up with your hand. You had to have clean hands before you could do that. And when I was 10 years old, my mother let me make my first biscuits. And she stood over me while I sifted the flour and made sure my hands were clean as they could be. No dirty fingernails or anything. And she told me how, you know, now to put in. I usually, if I'm going to make this one baking sheet of biscuits, I'll put in a teaspoon of soda and maybe a tablespoon of baking powder and whatever you put in it, and then you put a little blob of Crisco or that kind of thing to work in with it. And you just start working them together and taking in the flour as you go along until you get your dough batch made.
And then did you use milk or buttermilk? Or?
We usually use soda and buttermilk. If you used sweet milk, you just didn't use soda in it. And so then you get your dough worked just right, keeping enough flour that you could give it a shape. You could pick it up even in your hand like that. And then you'd pinch it off. If you wanted little biscuits, you'd get a little pinch, and if you wanted bigger biscuits, and then you roll them out like this and put them on the pan. And I was 10 years old when I did my first batch. Some of them were big, some of them were little.
I bet you they tasted wonderful.
I thought they were the best biscuits I ever tasted. And of course, Daddy made a big to-do about it, you know. My goodness, sure glad we got another biscuit maker in the house, because if anything happened to Mother, she got sick or something, you would have to make the biscuits all the time.
Well, what all did y'all have for breakfast with them? Did you have like honey or eggs or gravy?
Molasses.
We had bacon and we had honey, or we had homemade honey all the time, and syrup. Mother always had preserves and jelly. Eggs, we'd have scrambled eggs, and sometimes we'd have scrambled eggs with bacon crumbled up in them, and all kind of goodies. We ate a lot.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
With all the chores or all the different tasks that you would do out there that people today couldn't do, they wouldn't know how to churn butter or get the butter or make buttermilk.
Yeah, I churned a lot, and I didn't mind it because I could just sit out there and sing.
You promised us that you were going to think of us. You didn't promise, but you were going to think of a song that you would sing when you were churning butter.
Oh, I'll have to think about that.
Okay, all right.
But you had to milk and you had to pick vegetables.
Yeah.
And I guess you had chickens running loose in the yard.
Oh yeah,
But did they have their own house or coop?
Yeah, we had a big chicken house, and we had nests built around.
Did you, as the children, have to go find the eggs?
Gather the eggs, and if you found one old grouchy hen that was claiming her nest and didn't want you to bother, that was a hen that wanted to set. So that was when you set the eggs under her. And I'll tell you one about our neighbor Lois White. Lois married a white. Wheelington was her name. Lived next door to us, and she was one of these girls that just knew everything. You know, I can do anything. Just ask me, I can tell you. So I think this may have been the same time that her mother was there with that material, asking Mother to make her a dress if she could. And so she and Mother were talking that. And Lois decided she'd just go out and look around the yard, see if there's anything interesting. So she came back in. She said, Miss Spencer, I found an old hen out there that wanted to set, and I just put a dozen eggs under her. Mother was very put back because she liked to know what was going on and do it herself. She didn't want somebody.
A dozen eggs under one hen?
Well, there'd be a dozen little chickens once it started crawling out of there. Now, where was I on my other story?
Well, you were telling the biscuit story. Did you finish the biscuit story?
Yeah, the biscuits turned out good, and after that, Daddy bragged on them so much that he called me his little biscuit maker. So I just about got it turned over to me.
I bet you so.
And I bet you that they got to be about the same size.
Yeah, they finally looked like biscuits.
Yeah.
But your dad was the molasses maker for the community.
He cooked molasses.
So you probably had lots of molasses.
Oh
with your
yeah,
biscuits.
we had to. We'd be paid in the molasses buckets were made for that by this company that made them. And they had the sealing lid on them, so that would keep from year to year. Sometimes, owing to the goodness of the making, sometimes it would get a little sugary if it hadn't been cooked just right. So Daddy had a knack for his syrup would be just right 5 years after it was made. It never sugared and it never turned sour like some syrups do. So he got plenty of syrup making business. And we had about 6 or 8 beehives, and he robbed the hives when it was time to go in and take the honey. I always thought that was kind of tacky to call it robbing the hives, because how were they going to use all that honey? He always left enough for the bees to eat. But he would rob the honey and he never got badly stung. But
Did he have the outfit?
He had
the net.
wire,
Yeah, he had that.
a net that went over his head. But he never got stung on the hands or anything. He just had
His bees knew him.
he'd just go in there and cut from the side, take the cones of honey that needed to be taken out. And
Did your mama have a kitchen garden?
yeah, she always had a big garden, and Daddy would see that everything she wanted put in there was put in there. And she wanted certain things, but she didn't want it taken up by too much stuff that wasn't going to yield what she wanted to work with. And she would can beans and snap beans and that sort of thing. But if it was something that came from the field, like corn that was going to be cut off the cob and heated and canned, Daddy would gather the corn, and he would take all the silks and everything off, cut it off the cob if she wanted it off the cob, and get it just ready for cooking. So Mother's job then was cooking and canning it. And whatever it was she was working on, he would prepare it and sit on the back porch back there and get it ready to put on and cook. He was very, very good at stuff like that. And he'd make sausage. He could season sausage as well as he could make syrup. They would just melt in your mouth. They were so good. And something else that Oh, he would usually make the hominy after Grandma was gone. As long as she lived, she would always make enough hominy for everybody. But he learned to make it, and he would do that. So he would work in the field all day if it needed doing, and then he would help Mother and see that she had help. And if he found any of the boys sitting around with their feet up somewhere reading, your mother could use a little help.
Did your brothers help him in the fields?
Oh yeah, they did everything he did. Our cook stove in the kitchen was next to the wall that separated it from the back porch. So the stove would be here, and then there was a window in the wall that came up between the kitchen and the porch, and there was a big window right here by the stove. And outside the window, Daddy built a wood box about half the size of this table and built it up to the height of the windowsill. And if Mother was cooking, she needed more wood. She could, if it was cold, she could just raise the window and get her wood and put it in the stove. And she would most always have something going all day after she cooked the lunch for whoever was at home. She would put either peanuts or sweet potatoes, little eating size sweet potatoes or something, and then quit putting the wood in because she was through with her lunchtime, and it would get them just right. As the stove cooled down, they would be ready to eat. And we would always love coming home from school and seeing what she had for us to nibble on.
While you did your studies.
Yeah. And about that wood box, I never saw Mother spank or very, very much scold one of us if we didn't behave like we should. But there would always be, you go fill up the wood box.
That was something you didn't want to hear.
Did not want to do it. And she said, and I want them laid in straight. Don't throw them in there where they all turn one way and one another. And that was mainly the boys that would get that. Go fill up the wood box.
Mm-hmm.
So does your dad do most of the preparing of the wood, chopping it and such like? Or did the boys do that too?
He did till the boys were old enough to trust with the axe, and then he'd turn it over to them. Yeah, there was always something you could do if you had to.
And milking was one you didn't appreciate all that much.
I didn't start that until they thought I was old enough and big enough to do it. And then I hated it like everything. I didn't mind much of anything else I did except milking. And Daddy could milk up a storm, so he'd take my place if that was a day I didn't want to do it.
That's right.
And peanuts, he would raise a big field of peanuts every year. And the loft over the barn, when you would go into the barn, you could take the wagon through the opening, and then over that was a great big loft. And when the peanuts were pulled, you didn't want to leave them too long in the field in case it rained and they got mildewed and stuff. So after they were mature enough to bring in, they would bring them in by the wagon loads and just throw them up in the loft with the pitchforks. So in the cold winter, when you'd have a spare Saturday, we could go down there with our overcoats on, climb up in the loft and pick off enough peanuts to parch or fix that night for something. And then when they all got cured, we'd pick all of them up off and store them. But we always had peanuts, we had popcorn, one year he planted popcorn, and we thought that was really something.
Oh
Have
yeah.
your own peanuts and popcorn, and we'd make syrup candy and put peanuts in it.
Call it Cracker Jacks.
Yeah. But Daddy and Mother were a good team. They each one helped out on whatever the other one needed. And there's not very many men in those days that would help with the canning and that kind of stuff like he did.
Okay.